Welcome to Sales and Marketing Talk Show. Today we are talking about account-based marketing with Sangram Vajre. And welcome, Sangram. Great to have you on the
Hey,
show.
thanks, man. Yeah, thank you for having me and waking me up so that I can actually get fired up for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it will be hopefully a great start for the day. And I think many listeners have heard the term like account-based marketing. But I think still many people are thinking like, oh, what is account-based marketing really is? So could you open up a little bit, like what is account-based marketing? What's the pitch for that one?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story that might put things in context for everybody listening to this. So I used to run marketing at Pardot, right? And we got acquired by Exact Target, then by Salesforce. So I spent a couple of years at Salesforce. And what was interesting during that time was when we started doing this great way of generating leads, we were doing really well. I was hitting all the quota numbers for number of leads for our little business unit within the ecosystem of Salesforce. And I remember distinctly our head of sales coming in, man, Sangram, you and your team have knocked off all the goals. You got more leads than we ever had. That's fantastic. How about this? Next month, can you generate 3,000 more leads? And, I just sank in my seat because I'm like, am I just a coin operated lead machine? Because that's literally what I feel right now. We just hit the most number of leads. Why is nobody talking about pipeline velocity? Why is nobody talking about expansion? Why are we not talking about ability to move deals faster and bigger? It just irked me. And that led to the whole idea of building Terminus and ABM. So for anybody who's thinking about or feels like the same what I felt, which is they're just generating leads for their sales team, then ABM is a thing, because what ABM allows you to do is to really change the mindset. And in my words, flip my funnel. Is like flip your funnel and say, instead of going after any and everybody, if you're B2B, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be going after the right accounts, because you're not selling a Nike shoe. What you're selling is a specialized technology piece of software or service to a specialized set of people who has a clear problem and they need a clear business outcome. So if that's you, then what you really need to do is, instead of starting broad at the top and getting narrow at the bottom, the Forrester study says that only less than 1% of the leads actually turn into customers, which is why we have to generate so many leads. What if you flipped it and said, you know what, instead of going broad, I'm going to go narrow. I'm going to go after these 100 accounts and turn those 100 accounts, 50% of them, into customers. And I can share stories later on about companies having done just that and have tremendous success. So to me, ABM is a buzzword. I wrote my second book that just said, well, look, ABM is just B2B. So to me, it's just a better, smarter way of marketing.
Yeah, sounds very interesting, and I totally agree on the fact that if you really choose your niche, choose the best 100 clients that you want to go after, so then it's way easier to get them. But what do you think? Is ABM for everyone and every company? Like how you should know that? Should I go with the ABM or should I go with some other strategy?
That's a great question, man. It's not for everybody. It's not. I love to say it, but the reality is, just like you're not selling a Nike shoe to everybody, you're not selling ABM or wanting to use ABM for even though you're in B2B. But what's interesting are these two counter elements to it that people don't typically think about. One is that if you're selling, let's say, a transactional software for $10 a month, $100 a month, even $1,000 a month, and you are actually trying to get people to buy that, ABM may not be good for you, because it's going to take time, energy, resources to figure out the process and the way you're going to go about it. In a little bit, we can talk about examples of some companies who have done it and what that one-to-one campaign looks like, and it might make you feel like, oh, that's a lot. Well, it is a lot when you think about doing it for $100 per month customer, but it's not a lot if you have $100,000 a year or a $1 million deal. It's not a lot. That's the minimum that you would be doing. So it's, the context is that it is not for everyone. But if you're in B2B, even in B2B, it's not for everyone. If you have a transactional business model, ABM may not be good. A typical rule of thumb that I've seen work, haven't seen thousands and thousands of companies and customers of Terminus and others do use, is at a minimum your deal size is about 25 to 50,000 annual contract value ACV. If you have 4 or more people in the decision-making process, and if your sales cycle is more than 3 to 6 months, if those 3 things kind of start making sense to you, you can kind of play around with those 3 variables. I think ABM becomes more and more attractive. The more people are involved, the bigger the deal size, and the longer the sales cycle. If the longer, the bigger the variable becomes, the more important ABM is, because guess what? If you go and talk to your salesperson, they're already doing it. They may not be calling it, but they're going after strategic accounts in a very strategic way, and they're doing some unscalable things. That's what marketing needs to start focusing and doing.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually got a great comment on that one from Andrew, that knowing your customers is your first step to be able to target your marketing. And I think we could dive a little bit deeper on that one. Like, what are the things that you should be doing first when you are starting your ABM? So basically, where you should be starting.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a question that I think haunts a lot of people, right? Because we want quick response, we want quick answers, we want quick results, and the reality is that's not really what happens if you're doing it through ABM. We all know that deals don't close overnight; they take time and effort and all those things. But the best place to start, in my book ABM is B2B, we created this framework that I hope people, if you take nothing from this conversation, take that framework to heart, because I've seen that framework being used in board meetings or with even CFOs and CEOs to help them recognize what technologies you need, but also what strategies you're employing. Because a lot of people, everybody thinks they know marketing and give feedback on that, but the reality is not everybody is doing it well. So the framework is called the TEAM framework: target, engage, activate, and measure. TEAM: target, engage, activate, and measure. And that's really where you should start. A lot of times, and you can attest to me, or our audience could attest to that, a lot of times marketing will start with the engagement bucket. They will go ahead and start creating webinars. They will go and start creating ebooks. They'll go and start creating social posts, because somebody on that team is a content manager and content specialist, and their job is to create content. But they will skip the very step within the team framework, the T, the targeting. So the order of this is really, really important. Target is super important, and within target, what I mean by that is not just talking about ICP or your TAM and saying, all right, this is where we're going to go after. No. You actually need to segment your T, which means you need to look at them and say, which one of these accounts, let's say you pick 50 accounts to go after, which one of these 50 accounts are tier 1, which means they have a higher deal size, they're a bigger value, they are the one that's going to really help you meet your revenue goals, and they will be great logos for your organization. Tier 2 could be a little bit smaller in organization, maybe mid-market if you're going after SMB, mid-market enterprise. They have a shorter sales cycle, and those are just a great recurring revenue for our business. And maybe tier 3, which is like, okay, if we get these, great. If we don't get this, that's not going to break our bank. So when you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and that's where you start, you can actually create experiences that are going to be fundamentally different for tier 1 versus tier 2 versus tier 3. And that's when you really start doing ABM. If you're sending the same exact email to all tiers, guess what? That's a red flag. You're not doing ABM.
Yeah, exactly. Could you talk us through a little bit more detail on the other parts as well? So what happens after the T?
Oh, great. Of course. So target, again, as I said, order is very important. Going in order will make people scream because they want to move faster, but sometimes you have to slow down to go faster, right? So figuring out the target part is super important, the segmentation, and buying with the sales team on that. The engagement is now in the service of targeting. So engagement is like, let's say you're creating an ebook. Well, you shouldn't be creating any ebook. You should be creating the ebook for those target accounts. So you need target accounts. Let's say you're targeting financial services companies. Imagine creating an ebook for financial services companies. So you start seeing that the content starts becoming more about those in the service of those accounts, not because you need to create an ebook on how your platform is great or how your industry is doing. No, that industry, so that those people will read. And then third one is activate. Activate is activating your sales team, not activating your campaign, which means your sales team need to be excited about sending it. And sales is not going to be excited for another blueprint on your own thing. They're going to be excited about blueprint for financial services organization for your industry. They will send that to their target accounts, right? They will be more than happy to do a webinar and be part of it and engage them. Like, hey, we're creating just for these 10 accounts, which is why targeting, again, is so important. So target, engage, activate your sales team, and then measure in an iterative way what's working, what's not. Because I'll tell you another thing is at Terminus, when we started doing ABM, we failed the very first time. We failed because in the first time, marketing said, well, it's ABM, so let's marketing come up with all the accounts. Sales didn't care. So they didn't follow up. The activation didn't really work. So we failed. So we said, you know what, this is not working out. Sales, since you are the closest to the customer, you're close to revenue, we need you to do your part. You come up with accounts. It failed again. The reason it failed was because sales came up with some of the accounts that our product couldn't service at that time, or they came up with some accounts that were too large for us to bite on at this moment to get their attention. So it failed again. So the third time when it worked, third time is a charm, was when we actually sat down in a room together and spent, like, we're not leaving this until we both agree on which accounts we're going to target on tiering basis, which accounts we're targeting for acquisition or pipeline velocity or expansion, whatever the strategy we all are coming together. We all are agreeing on it. And once we do agree, we're going to actually apply this and make sure that you're activated on it. That's really what made it successful. So the team framework is really something that I hope people take to heart.
Yeah, I think that's like super important. That if I think on my role as a sales guy, like the different kind of, like, for example, content that our marketing is putting out, of course, if the content is like directly talking to the most important audience, it's so much nicer to share those ones during the sales conversations and so on. So it really helps on that.
Right on.
Yeah. And you gave already like some examples on the mistakes you did at Terminus when starting on ABM. But what do you think which are like the typical mistake companies make while doing ABM or while starting ABM?
Well, some of it might seem very odd, but I think I've come to grips with it to recognize that it's better said than not. One is saying, if you're an organization, you get hyped up after literally this call, you get hyped up and said, you know what, going after the right accounts, engaging on the right things, and not just any content, bringing these accounts or websites is a great thing, we should do it. And you just go and announce in your organization, we're going to do ABM. That's a problem. You will fail. And the reason is that people have these unrealistic expectations when we say we're going to go do this thing, and then people want to see results. What I ask companies to do, as I counsel them or on a board or advisor for a lot of these companies, is that, look, don't announce that you're going to launch a campaign. Announce the results of the campaign, which means go and work with two salespeople. Like, let's say it's you and somebody else on the sales team. Marketing can go say, you know what, you get it, Jill gets it. So both of you, let's just go ahead and work on your 10 accounts that you need to close for the next quarter. And do the most unscalable things for you, meaning it might mean webinar for your 3 accounts, in ebook that is just changed only for those accounts. Maybe you create a landing page that is one-on-one for those 10 accounts and see what happens. We all know the results are going to be better than anything else they could have done. So you're going to go and tell to everybody in your company, in your sales team, like, hey, look, this is the reason why I hit my quota. This is the reason that helped me accelerate these 2 deals. And that's going to make the rest of the organization or your sales leadership and CEO and CFO saying, marketing, why are you not doing that for every single person? And that's when you say, great idea, let's go do it, right? So it's literally reverse psychology that, I learned that with my kids, trying to make sure how to say no without saying no. But that's really how you think about it. So the number one mistake a lot of companies make it, they announce they're doing ABM. And my response to that is, don't announce that you're doing ABM, announce the results of the campaign that you're running, not the campaign itself. So that's one. The other one is something that I've already shared, which is marketing and sales not on the same page. I did this survey, like almost every quarter I will put it out there. And I would say, if it sounds so good, if it's so right, if the data supports it, if organizations are doing it, thousands of companies are seeing success, then what's holding you back? Why do you think it's failing? Because it's certainly failing in some organizations. And the number one response to that survey is not because of technology, not because it's not top-down support, not because people don't have the right intentions. It's actually because sales and marketing are not on the same page. And I would have loved for it to be something else, but unfortunately that's exactly it, which is why, going back to the team framework, once you target the right accounts in partnership with sales, when you figure out how you're going to engage them in the service of those accounts, and when you activate sales, that's really when you can start measuring real results. And that's the second one, I think, mistake people make, is they go and launch the stuff like we did because they felt they knew and they want to have quick fix. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah, and I think like the problem with sales and marketing, it's something you hear like very often, that hey, we have challenges on like aligning our sales and marketing. And I think it's of course like good to start with like talking together, like who are our ideal customers and how we should go after them. But what do you say, like how the cooperation between sales and marketing should evolve after, like, hey, we have had a like kickoff together, we have planned what we will be doing next, but like after that one, does it happen often that then everyone just forgets everything we used to talk about and then go on their like own trades?
Oh, that's a great question, man, because I think that's exactly what happens. A lot of people would just go and say, you know what? Yeah, that was a great meeting. I need to go make my calls now to my other accounts. And you're like, whoa, wait. We just agreed on these accounts. So it is going to require constant shepherding, because here's the thing. Let's be honest. Marketing's number one job is to either incrementally or exponentially grow sales. Period. If that is not what marketing thinks they do, then I think they're in the wrong business completely. And it took me 10 years of therapy to go ahead and say that out loud, but it's just the reality. Our job is to incrementally or exponentially grow sales. We might do that with content, with brand, but once you understand that, you're going to start looking at the numbers the way salespeople look at it. Not a single salesperson out there doesn't want the money that will come from closing the accounts. They're in the profession of selling deals, so they want to do that. But they won't go after any and everybody. Their time is very valuable. So they're going to go after the best accounts that have the best engagement and the best propensity to buy from them, right? So the problem happens when marketing says, hey, we just did a webinar campaign and we have 5,000 leads. Do you want to follow up? And then they wonder, why are these people not following up? Are they lazy? No. Salespeople are not lazy. They're the hardest working people in your organization. The problem is that you're not giving them the leads in the accounts that is going to matter. It's for them to have a job that month or that quarter. They'll be fired. So I think there's a layer of empathy here and understanding of it. So I ask any marketing team that join at my company or other places, like the number one thing they should do is be on sales calls. Like make it a routine, make it a habit, be on sales calls, see the process, how they go about things, how long it takes, how many calls it takes, how many emails it takes. Really understand that, and you will realize that it's not easy as running a webinar or putting 3 ebooks. Our job as marketers is actually quite easy. Trying to be a salesperson is hard. So I think as hard as it is to keep saying the word alignment, because it's such a bastardized word, it ultimately comes down to that. And companies would do better where marketing and sales just work as one team.
Yeah. Exactly. I just read a book called The Sales Acceleration Formula, and I think there's some great ideas about like the service level agreement that sales and marketing should have between them on like quality of the leads and all that. And I think it's great point, and I really agree that marketers should join the sales course. It really helps them to do their job better.
Right on.
But hey, then you already mentioned a little bit earlier about like different tools that ABM requires, and I think that is something that many companies are thinking, that if we want to start doing ABM, do we have to invest in many different tools and start things off, or can you start without those? What do you think on that?
You don't need a single tool to do ABM. I know I'm the co-founder of a tech company that does and help companies do ABM at scale. We have thousands of companies and customers as customers, but I say this openly: you don't need you don't need a tool to do ABM. You need a mindset to do ABM, because ABM is a strategy, not a tactic. But a technology will help you scale it. So you do it after you have a little bit of win and success with it. So all the things that we're talking about can be done without any technology. You don't need technology to bring sales and marketing in a room. You just need to get on Zoom and do it, right? You probably already have everything you need. Then let me tell you a story of where one of these companies had this really interesting period where it became a thing where they literally got to a point where they lost their job or were going to lose their job, but the numbers were going up. So, and this is a story I have in the book for a company called Pramada, where Jeremy, who ran that, they did phenomenal. They were doing really, really good. And for about 2 years, they were doing ABM. And what they saw was the traffic to their website dropped by about 70%. Now, imagine that in your organization is like if the CEO or head of marketing sees like, wait a minute, the people who are responsible for driving people to the website, the traffic has been steadily decreasing and now it's dropped to 70%. You don't know what you're doing. And well, Jeremy and other people said, wait. Our pipeline is going up, our revenue is going up, our deal value is going up. Like, why? Give me a day to figure it out. They're like, fine, go for it. So they went back and looked at, since they started doing ABM, only the traffic from the right accounts were coming to their website, which means that all the other bad traffic wasn't ever coming to the website because they have just fine-tuned within the 2 years period of time the right accounts. And as a matter of fact, the cost of acquisition dropped by 60%. Well, because instead of using 22 different technologies, they were using 6. So the conversation went from, oh my God, you're going to be fired, to like, oh, we need to promote this guy, right? So it is literally a mindset. And your technologies, you probably have everything you need to do base level ABM. But what you may not have is, from a technology perspective, is like, okay, this works for 10 accounts. How do I do it for 300 accounts? And now you need technology to help you scale that. But gosh, don't buy tech just for the heck of it. Buy it only to scale it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And I think many companies, when they are thinking about ABM or some other things, that, hey, we should do better sales, so we should do better marketing, then they are going with, hey, let's buy some expensive tech and then everything is solved out. I think it should be exactly the other way around. First, start doing things, and then when you need tech to scale things up, then go from there.
Right.
Great. Hey, I read a super interesting article. It was actually, I think, on your website when I went through like prepping for this interview, and I found a great quote from there that retention is the new acquisition, and I think this is something that's been in headlines, at least for like B2B SaaS companies, B2B service companies who are like wanting clients who will hold on for a long time. And I think this is super interesting subject. But what do you think? What is ABM's role on customer retention?
Oh man, that's a great. It's something became a rallying cry for us last year as everybody hit through COVID. What do we do? The new customers. I mean, at this point, everybody was freezing their the capacity to spend money. People didn't know what was going on, especially in the early couple of quarters. And for a company like ours, which is venture backed, we were like, wait a minute, that's a problem, because we have made some promises and we have made some goals and we're hiring and all that kind of stuff. All that to say is that last year was our best year ever. It seemed it very hard to say that, given all the craziness that has happened in the world, and is nothing short of like human spirit kind of prevailing all of us out of this. But from a revenue perspective and company perspective, we hired more people than we did before, and we were able to hire 80 more people or so this year, and the company is just growing much faster. Our retention was the best, and the reason this quote came about was because we fully buckled down on the idea that if we're not going to get net new customers, the minimum we should be doing is retaining our existing customers. And if anybody listening to this have worked in a SaaS business, you will realize that it is better to retain a customer than to bring 5 more customers. It's just from a cost of acquisition, gross margins, like every single SaaS metric that makes a business sustainable, valuable, equitable, is because how your gross margins are and what your net retention rate is. So if you can retain customers at a much higher rate than bring in net new customers, you're better business. If you are having a leaky bucket, which is what it's called, when you have 5 customers come in and 4 out, you're constantly spending all these things, and you're celebrating here, but you are like your customer success team and business is kind of plummeting here, and all of a sudden one day your retention really goes bad, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened? We thought we were doing great. This happens all the time in great companies. So we coined this phrase, and really TK, our CEO at Terminus, coined this phrase, which is retention is the new acquisition. He's like, if we do this right, we'll get through this. And exactly what that happened. It actually helped us be so focused on our customers and their ability to drive results, like never before. We should have always been, but it just focused us on it. And it changed our business model. It allowed us to fully be supportive of it to a point where now our net retention is better than it has ever been. So I want companies to recognize that when you think about ABM, you might think only net new acquisition. Maybe, just maybe, you might also start looking at pipeline velocity, which means deals are in the pipe and you need to accelerate them by giving air cover. But what's even more interesting and more exciting is your ability to actually drive business for the existing accounts, because that's where the business is going. You're going to need some love and some ability to drive things around in your organizations for you to say that, you know what, I'm not only going to work on acquisition, I'm going to also work on the expansion of deals, upsell, cross-sell. We like to call it upserving our existing customers. But that's ABM. Why? Because in ABM, you're going after a list of target accounts. Well, these are customers, so your target accounts now, and you understand what they need. Well, you should know what your customers need, and you deliver on something that you can serve them well. Well, if you know your customers well, then you would know which product do you want to observe them with, and your net retention will go up. A case in point, in the book, I write about this company, which I think most people have heard about, Thomson Reuters. And when they started doing expansion, especially the retention strategy, the win rate for those 250 accounts, and I had the legal team sign this. So this is, people might think, may not believe this is true, but I had the legal team of Thomson Reuters sign it up. They said, Jillian, who ran this, she said they had 95% win rate with those accounts on the retention side. Not retention meaning upselling, cross-selling to a different product or service in your account. 95%. Now imagine that happening in your organization. What would that change?
Yeah, it's great number for sure. And there was already like some ideas about measuring your ABM and the numbers side. And I think, of course, when doing ABM, people are thinking, how can I measure what's happening there? And I think it's, of course, you can measure like, hey, this is how much the customer acquisition cost is if you are targeting, for example, 10 accounts, and this is the average lifetime value of the customer. But what are like the other metrics that companies should be measuring in their like ABM funnel? How they should know if things are working the right way or not?
That's a great question. I think it's something that paralyzes the best of us when it comes to measurement, because you want to measure everything, and a lot of times it may not be the right thing. So 2 points on that. One, majority of your metrics are probably vanity, and it's really not driving your business outcome. Let me say that again. Majority of the metrics that marketing is measuring are vanity. They're not driving your business outcomes. For example, you might be measuring how many people downloaded an ebook. You might be measuring how many people attended a webinar. The reality is, if you went back and mapped that to your target list of accounts, what you would find, unfortunately, is that maybe out of every 100 people, there are 5, maybe 10 people from your target accounts. So we need to learn to ask the question, so what? I want people to write this down because this is super important. Ask the question, so what? So what we have so many people to the website? So what we have so many people attending a webinar? So what we have so many people downloading your ebook? Are they from our right accounts? And if they're not, then they're vanity. So the way you measure ABM is going to be 100% based on your business metrics. So if anybody comes and says, hey, let's look at our open rate, click-through rate, ad rate, download rate, conversion rate, nobody cares. Nobody really cares. You should do that. Look at that if you want to create some sort of efficiency in your marketing part of the business. Makes sense. But imagine walking into a CEO or a board meeting and actually talking about conversion rates and open rates at a marketing level or campaign level. Makes no sense. We wouldn't do that, right? So why would we focus so much on it? So a proper ABM funnel would include metrics that are purely based on business outcome. Let's just use 3 examples for it. Let's say you're doing acquisition. Your typical business metrics for acquisition should be how many net new meetings were set for your SDR team, how much pipe did you create for your AE. Those are the metrics that you should be measuring. Most marketers have no idea, no clue, don't even think about those things, and that's where they fail, and that's where they lose trust of their sales team, because they're saying, hey, here's the new launched campaign, here's the new webinar, and they're like, well, it doesn't help me. Let's use example 2, pipeline velocity. At this point, you're helping the deals that are in the pipe that sales want to close that month or that quarter. We should be measuring the conversion ratio there. How long does it take from stage A to stage B? What can we do? What content do we need to create to move those things? That's really what you should be measuring. And then let's use the third example of expansion, since we just talked about it. In that, you should be measuring how many of these customers are we able to upsell, cross-sell, meaning upserve them, how many of them we have increased the size of the deal, how many of you have shortened the way they actually buy it. Like, those are the kind of business metrics that you should be measuring. So ABM is going to make everybody more strategic and talk about business metrics. That is not something that marketers are most familiar with.
Yeah, great ideas on the metrics, and for sure new ideas for people. Hey, then let's hop to our last phase of this interview here today. So I have a question from our previous guest to you, and then you can ask a question from our next guest. But firstly, my last guest was Mark Killens from Drift. Mark says hi to you. He said that you guys know each other. And yeah, the question from Mark was that, what do you think is the future of ABM? Where do you see ABM in like 2030?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel in some ways I've already shared the future by 2025 with my second book, ABM is B2B. And I did see Forrester corroborate with it late last year that ABM will become B2B. So I feel like that part of the future, because I wrote that in 2019. So ABM future is set. It is B2B. I think the bigger question really embedded, I think, in this question from Mark is like, where is it going beyond that? And I feel it's going to the idea of go-to-market. A lot of companies know and recognize that if you want to grow, you'll have a go-to-market strategy or go-to-market process. But what they don't have is a framework that allows you to think through how do you bring marketing, sales, and customer success. Very big. We haven't talked about them at all in this conversation, and I think that's the missing part of the puzzle. Your customer success team. We like to call them high-performing revenue teams. How does your high-performing revenue teams work together to deliver the business outcomes? And I think the future really is not just marketing and sales, but bringing these high-performing revenue teams together and deliver on the go-to-market process, which will really accelerate your path to market and create this connected experience for your customers where they feel like they're part of it. I believe that's where it's going if we are going that far as 2030.
Great answer. Thanks for that. And then lastly, on next episode, I'm talking with Jordan Stupar. We are talking about B2B sales. Jordan is a sales coach in that area. So what do you think? What I should be asking Jordan in our next episode?
Well, you should. I love that. I love the way you're framing this up too. Like kudos to thinking through this. For Jordan, maybe the question for him is like, what is the number one thing sales wants from marketing? And put it out there and say it. And maybe if you want, like, I believe what they want, and you could test that on the next conversation you have with Jordan. I believe what they want is engagement in their target accounts. Like, they really want their accounts that they are working on marketing to help them engage them and drive them to close, help them to close, because they can work on every one of those accounts for every one of the people in those accounts either. So that's but I'd be curious to hear, what is the number one thing what salespeople need from marketing?
Great question. I will ask that one from Jordan on our next episode. And at this point, thank you so much, Sangram, for joining me. Thank you for all the listeners. And if you liked the episode, feel free to share it on your social and tag me and Sangram on that one. And have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam.